All right, good morning everybody and welcome to our April 7th Community Board meeting. I'd just like to see any apologies. No, everybody's here. I'd like to remind our guests at public forum that you do have 5 minutes to address the board, and also just that you all know that this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be made available online. And I would like to invite our first speaker, which is Brian Moorhead. Brian, would you like to join us at the end of the table?
Sure. I have printed some material. Just to make it easier, because all I'm going to do is read it. There is some supporting material. I don't know how many we need. Assume the model.
Thank you. Hey, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Can you get one piece out?
There's a few left.
Yeah, I've got one.
Well, thank you for the opportunity of talking to you this morning. I will just read it because it'll take that long to read it probably. There is a consent in front of the council at the moment. It's RMA 2018-471. It's about the addition of 225 sections to the settlement at Mercury. So a lot of that is relevant to this. So my concern fundamentally is a large portion of the public reserve, the so-called harbour park scheme created, is already dominated by traffic, trailer parking issues. Of course, the current uses of the harbour park include what you can see on map 1. I've made a slight error which I've amended. A and B are going to be incorporated into the harbour park. Pretty much A and B is the new area. It's the old chunk of the estate. So the current uses, are families, kids safe swimming and passive beach water recreation, wind sports, other water sports, mainly motorised, other motorised activities, jet ski and powerboat motorised in. Some of these activities require set-up space and safe operating room, and you can see the areas of the harbour that are pretty much used by people. There are considerable overlaps and possible conflicts of interest. So it's reasonable to expect that 224 new sections could produce more trailer and boat pressure over the busiest periods. And there are already some tension and some conflicts of use apparent, and some separation and thought to the management plan of the park would, I suspect, be very beneficial. Trailer parking and manoeuvring dominates the whole area. There is a suggestion of parallel parking of trailers on the wide access road to the wharf. It seems impractical. I've never seen it working in any other jurisdiction, and I'd suggest that it's not a solution that should be entertained. Now, additional space is required at certain times over summer and holidays in particular. I mean, even in 2010, people were parking in the adjacent paddock when the airstrip was operating. So it's a long-standing issue. And I suspect that in the initial planning of the area, the future expansion of Margarine might have been a little underestimated in the park designation. So there are some safety concerns. There are traffic and pedestrian issues. Pedestrian dominant and friendly zones would be desirable at the beach. I mean, I note here the Auckland Council Regional Park 30-metre setback idea could be explored where vehicles are prohibited from the littoral zone and people park further back and they walk their picnic basket in. It's just one way of dealing with it. Now, there could be a consideration of obtaining additional reserve land to perhaps overcome these issues. And I think a possible mechanism is the BDL RMA consent, which I don't think is yet consented, but I'm having a bit of trouble finding out. It's the 224 or more new sections at Margarine. There are some acknowledged issues that the ratepayers have raised already around the three waters in particular. And one of them that's interesting is that the stormwater treatment and discharge standards, the lakes are deemed non-swimmable even by the council planners in the consent. So conversations have been occurring for a number of years. We don't seem to have a resolution, and it looks like we're in the planning phase for this park, seeing as construction has started on these sections. It is currently a non-notified consent application. I'd really suggest that there's not much community input being obtained at the moment on the absolute specifics. So the thing that might provide a way forward, in the consent, the stormwater lakes are considered part of open space with high public utility, including water-related recreation. There is, however, an Environment Court decision around the golf course issue that stated that land vested for lakes, managed wetlands and planted swales, including surface access to them, to manage stormwater flows shall be credited for stormwater provision rather than for reserve contributions, except where lakes or wetlands have a dual function. For stormwater and amenity contributions should be proportionally credited. And after the analysis by ratepayers of the water quality and them being deemed non-swimmable, they don't really have any intimate recreational facility, these stormwater ponds. So there is a glimmer of a possibility of a way around this, and that's a readjustment of some areas, perhaps by rebalancing the reserve contribution and taking a little bit of extra space in behind the current area to alleviate some of these issues I've raised. So at the moment, the new sections are being created by excavating the stormwater lakes to give us a ground level above the proposed problem level for global warming and all that stuff. I think that there's some value in making the consent application notifiable, getting some full community and user group input to help you plan this a little better. And once we build it, we can't unbuild it. And a recent application as a footnote by the Fishing Club for consideration to request a clubhouse and fish cleaning building to be located in the Harbour Park just complicates this issue because it's going to put another chunk on top of what's already a fairly restricted public reserve area. So thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to answer a question if you have one.
Anyone have any questions for Brian? Saying if anyone's got any questions. Right, thank you for...
Great. The structure plan, pink stuff at the back, contains the somewhat concerning map that shows the degree of trail parking that the reserve will have. So I think you can see the problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
And thanks in general to the people who organised looking after motoring or doing a good job for the most part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Alison Henry and Yvonne Franklin. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. 2.5 minutes.
I've got my eye on the clock. Yes, I was there.
Alice and I are here to speak to item 3.1 on the board's agenda today. We represent the Mercury Bay Community Fund, and we've spoken to the board previously in our submission to the Mercury Bay Reserve Management Plan. I actually question why this item is on the agenda today, because it actually preempts deliberations for the Reserve Management Plan next month. We have spoken to the board to know that we have an interest in the Storm Road Reserve, and that we would like to see it considered in this round of the Reserve Management Plan submissions as changing the classification perhaps to local purpose reserve so there could be better use of the reserve. The draft Reserve Management Plan clearly identifies that the reserve has very little aesthetic appeal and is underutilised. We, along with another group, would like to see it utilised for pensioner housing. However, to have it on the board agenda today without deliberations having occurred as a result of submissions, to me is preemptive. And also, the staff recommendation in this report is that they're generally not supportive of reserves being utilised for other purposes of which they're classified, unless they're no longer suitable for that purpose. And that reserve is just not being utilised at all. So that needs to be considered in the long term.
Thank you. And should this stay on the agenda, I would just like to go through the comprehensive report just in the provision of social housing is typically a central government responsibility, and we say this, it's not so, but it's not what we want to talk to you about today. We are not asking, we say this again, council to build anything or fund anything, but we are asking our community board to support and facilitate the change of use of this reserve. Further down under the Reserves Act, talks about consultation and the public process. We accept that, we know that, we would be happy to facilitate that. The indicative costs, we accept costs. This is not expected to land on the community board. It talks about the change, if it needed to be gazetted or the Minister of Conservation involved. This is standard process and we accept that. The staff has noted that the reserve is underutilised, and this is not likely to alter because the area is all fully built up and the demographics of the area are not likely to change. And so what we're looking at is just a change of a use of that reserve. It doesn't alter the reserve, it just changes the use, leaves it open for more activities should that be needed. Go over to considerations. What we're saying to you as our community board, we need your help and we need your support. That's what we want from you. And it talks about the funds needing to go, you know, what has to happen. Well, we would operate exactly as we do now with our units on council land. All the funds we have go back into the maintenance and care of those units. Nobody gets paid. As Yvonne has said, the staff has already noted that this reserve is underutilised, and we would really like you to support what is a very urgent need in our community. In finishing, I think I would really, we just wish to note that we were very disappointed in this report. Instead of informing our community board about how you as our members could support and enable an ever-growing community need, this report lists all the roadblocks. So we're asking you as our community board members to support the change, and should this happen, support public consultation that will be necessary to allow for pension housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
2.5 minutes each.
Any questions?
Quick question. So
Yes.
that would be, as per other pensioner housing, would be run by a trust, wouldn't it?
It does,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly the same as it is now.
Yeah, the trust manages the employees.
The same trust, it was, you just take that over as an extension of the business.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Hopkins.
Hello team.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Been a while. I'm here representing the Mercury Bay South residents and ratepayers, and just got a few things that we'd like to bring to the board to as an enhancement for the area and so on. So I've got a small list, but it shouldn't take more than 5, I don't think. Right. The barbecue facility at Purani, it was put in 2013, I think, so 7 or 8 years old. It's quite underutilised at the moment, mainly because it's a bit of a dust bowl and it's got a lot of traffic around there at meeting times. It's dangerous for kids. I should read what it's got actually rather than off the cuff. Right, what we want is to take the traffic hazard out of using it with the children and adults. We feel this would be a relatively easy operation of replacing the bollards around the outside of the barbecue area, incorporating the toilets and playgrounds angled over to the barbecue table on the esplanade. What's happening at the present time is obviously it's stuck there in the middle of the car park, this barbecue area, and it's just not conducive to being there. I'm not quite sure why it was put there in the first place, but what we'd like to do, and I've got that area there where it's a bit rough for you, Jeremy, but, and these photos of it in the middle of the car park. You can get it. It would basically mean knocking a few trees down, taking the metal,
Trees down.
And just to allow the grass to grow, obviously, but it would need some planting put back in there. It would be a lot nicer if it was grass rather than, and we don't really need so much of the parking. You're not going to take too much of the parking away. There's plenty of parking up the back in that trailway park and whatnot. So we aren't short of it. But it's something we would like, certainly the community board to look at to make it more user friendly. So the other one is, and we've had quite a bit of local feedback on this one. The businesses who have concessions occurring in Estuary, we'd love them to try and limit their footprint. So you've got Cathedral Cove kayaks, you've got the Hahe Explorer, and you've got the local ferry guy, and who's got some what do they call it? SUPs, paddleboards. Yeah. So I mean, this is the sort of thing we're getting from Hahe Explorer, and it's okay when there's nobody there, but you know he's there normally reasonably early in the morning, and he only works when the swell's a bit too big at Hahe, so he comes over to touring. What we're getting is him taking up a lot of room when all the gang come in to take their kids to the touring, when he's quite able to go up and behind and park his wagon and his truck and trailer. So all we'd like to do is, and the same with Shannon with the SUPs and that, he puts 4 or 5 of them just laid out on the grass. I mean, instead of, you know, sure, he's not going to have everybody come in and grab them all at once, but I mean, if you can stack them in one piece rather than do that. So all we're wanting them to do is maybe have a word with them and just say, try and limit your footprint when the busy times are. So, next one. Few areas in Cook's Beach where the footpaths connect different streets. Half of it's grass and pitted and carry on, and the rest of it's concrete, and it's normally where the new subdivisions are, or going back 20 odd years, and the old ones that were, you know, yonks ago. So it'd be quite nice to have them actually finished, so carried on, and because quite a few of them, especially the Charles Green and Heck Place, they all connect through to the beach. And, you know, if you've got a pram and a trolley and the kids and you're taking everything down the kitchen sink to the beach, you know, it's around the concrete, but as soon as you hit an undulating grassland full of potholes, it's not so hot. So it'd be quite nice for the improvement in the area. We'd like to see that hopefully go into the footpath budget for Cook's Beach. Maintenance of our reserves. They seem to have gone back a bit. Around the tennis courts, they used to be done by the guys that do it all. The tennis club is now having to do it, spraying and weed eating. My son-in-law mowed the reserve the other day because it just got too tacky. And to be honest, I'm getting a little bit sick of putting in requests for services all the time. And I don't know whether the funding has been cut back for all that sort of stuff, but certainly you think coming up to Easter, you know, that they would make an effort to cut those areas, you know, because I know Soldiers Memorial always looks great, you know, I don't know whether there's a preference on those things, but it'd be good to see it spread out a bit. And I want to thank the roading team last year for what they did. great improvement. We had a meeting with Ed Varley not so long ago, just to try and look at the speed signs. The CBD with the footpath that put through, we're out to see the disabled parking and also the disabled or the ramps on from the curbs down, so prams can get over there and wheelchairs, etc. So we're looking forward to a few more improvements as we go along. Just haven't heard anything about the update on historic signage. That was probably over 9 months ago. So if we could sort of rattle somebody's page there, that would be great. And probably the last thing is I talked to Alan not so long ago about the guys cleaning fish. I don't know whether they've stopped it now on the wharf, and the wharfish and epic guys and all that. And we don't want to attract sharks. I mean, the kids do an annual swim there. It's not a good thing to every afternoon at 4 o'clock to have them bulleting fish on the back of the boat. And I've been in touch with the MPI, the fisheries officer got in touch with me, which was really good. It all lands back in TCDC score. So it's a litter thing. They can't do anything about it, the other guys. So I think if I don't know whether they're still doing it. I haven't put up. Jeremy, do you know whether they're still into that sort of stuff? Okay. But I don't know whether Alan or anybody's had a chat with them, but it'd be great to just get a consensus here that they do it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Cool.
That makes sense.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
Little bit longer.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for coming in and letting us know. Donna?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
I've got a couple here.
Okay, thanks. Coming down the list, Linda Chumley-Smith. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
I must apologise, I'm running on about 30% today, so David is kindly going to go through the submission that we'd like to have the Mercury Bay Community Board consider for us.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you. I'm a person who resides in Tawanui, and this is a similar submission that was put forward to the Tawanui Community Board and the Taira Community Board. So you don't have a copy, so I'll talk through it briefly. As you all know, an announcement was made some time ago by the director of NEMA, the National Emergency Agency, that sirens in New Zealand were not of a complete standard, and that there was a technical directive put out that this must happen by 2021. Of course, Thames were part of that notification, and they have since notified the community that no sirens will be active after September. Their communication was not very clear. It suggested that the sirens would be gradually disconnected during the period from now up until 2021. I just raised the point that technically the sirens in this community are technically compliant up until September, so they could be utilised for any warning system. On the 21st of February, the Emergency Management Committee, led by Gary Taylor, put forward a paper which was called Tsunami Siren Pager Disconnection. This paper will be circulated to you. So In that, it laid out the terms of disconnection, and that it suggested that this was going to be commencing immediately. I just want to point out that during, there's been a lot of discussion that the community knows about the closure of the siren network. I would say to that, that's wrong. The community is gradually becoming aware, but not everybody knows what it's all about. There was no offer to upgrade in any of the conversations coming from TCDC. There was not even a hint that there's new technology in the way of sirens and how they've developed. So the request that was made is that you as the board convey displeasure to TCDC that the paper which was put forward on the 25th is not acceptable to the Mercury Bay community. The second item of this is that the Mercury Bay Community Board undertake to discover the document that authorised the activity that is now going to take place. And that's basically disconnecting the sirens. I have spoken with Gary Towler, and he tells me that each of the sirens has a, what is he refers to as a parasite connector, which is activated by FENS, which is the Fire Emergency in New Zealand, and that will be removed. My concern is that when you say disconnect, do you actually mean disconnect or remove? So some of the community installations are quite substantial. My concern when I spoke on the subject was that these units would be dismantled and thus not affording any retrofit upgraded technologically advanced sirens. The third item is the Mercury Bay Community Board recommends that the TCDC engages the Coromandel community about sirens. Well, that is happening on the 12th of next month, or 12th of this month, I can say, is that you are first cab off the rank, 12 o'clock. And in this room, Gary Towler will come and talk to you about why they're disconnecting. He will tell you that there is no offer to upgrade out of that. So in the link of public alerting systems, the sirens in this community will lose the link, which is vital to public safety. And just on that subject, Northland region, I've been speaking with them, the Auckland City Council, I've been speaking with them, and I've yet to have a conversation with Bay of Plenty. They are all installing sirens, which is now capable of voiceover. Voiceover was part of the technical standard as an option, and they've elected to incorporate it. So what it does is identify that the tsunami siren has a greater purpose. It can now be used for public announcements. It could be used for chemical spills alerting. It could be, apart from earthquake, it could be for any other public announcement that they wish to broadcast. The fourth one is the Mercury Bay Community Board recommends to TCD that they immediately defer any action to disconnect the sirens between now and September. And the Mercury Bay Community Board received an undertaking from TCDC that they will communicate with each Coromandel community, ask and document community wishes on the retention of sirens or not as a public alerting system. Now, in the background of this, we found who the New Zealand supplier is, and they are Barton Sound Systems, which has a great reputation within the noise industry, especially the entertainment industry. They have a great reputation. They've undertaken to provide us costings. And I said to them, if I came into your shop and asked you for the blue one, what would it cost? And so they give me two types. One type is called an E-type, which is $90,000. Another type is an I-Force one, and this information will come your way, and that's $75,000. And in the discussion, especially orientated to Tawanui, was that are sirens in the right place? Well, we don't know, because historically, we don't know if there was any mapping. Sorry, that's it. I've been told time. Any questions?
Murray.
You just made a comment, sirens are 90,000, take Pawanui, how many would you need?
Well, we don't know.
Well, see, you should know, how many would you need and how would you get electricity? What 90,000 means nothing to me. I need to know and install the price of what it costs.
That is coming.
We got a price quote
Okay.
last
So at
year.
the moment, the modelling is being done in the United States by the parent company. And whilst they were doing it for Pawanui, I said, hey, why don't you do it for Whitianga, Hahei and Cook's Beach? So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have that modelling, which will change the price there.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And it actually changes the numbers too, because the equipment now is more sophisticated, and so where 4 were required, maybe 1's needed. So there is a difference.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Lee?
Oh, there's another lady over there, her name's Tracy, she wants to talk. Can we do this first? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before we start, Donna, there are 2 versions on that stick.
Yeah, just have to bear with me, I'm operating 2 different devices there.
I'll just ask Marnus to clarify which version it is.
They're both.
MP version, to the bottom one. This one?
Yep.
That one, please. So most of you know me, I'd like to introduce Marnus Pretorius. Marnus is the General Manager of the Thames Seagull Centre and is also someone who's also a trustee on our trust that you'll hear about today. He's also someone who's had a great depth of experience in waste management over many years here and overseas. We have at the moment a proposal in front of the Community Board for a memorandum of understanding to lease and operate a resource recovery centre in Whitianga. This is something we've been working on for a while. We're really excited about the potential. I'd like to ask Marnus to walk you through the background to what we're working on.
Yes, thank you.
Do you want to click through or?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. With the imminent construction of the transfer station, the opportunity arose to incorporate a resource recovery facility. And when I heard about it, I thought it was a real need here. And so we set to work looking if we could make that a reality. And so we got the idea for a resource recovery facility underway, and we just had some objectives. What would we look for in something like this? And largely based on the Seagull Centre's objectives. Basically, it was just number one to establish it. That's the major objective, is to get out and running. That's a significant task in itself. And then once it is established, really to operate it and to operate in a sense to reduce waste going to landfill. That's the primary objective. Also, being a community organisation, to liaise with other community organisations and get their input and cooperation. Also, carry out some work in the support of other community organisations. Also, create employment. There's an opportunity to create employment. The Seagull Centre has demonstrated that. And also a wide range of goods to the community. Frequently you'll see lots of people looking to get rid of goods, and the comment is, it's free to somewhere, otherwise we're going to dump it.
whereas he has a good outlet for these goods. Just this picture of the Seagulls in the shop, it's just for interest. And also to look at further down the line to have other programs that we can look at getting involved with. So where we got to, number one, we formed a trust in September last year. Things happened pretty quickly. 4 of us at the moment. That will evolve over time and depending on the level of skill we need and people we need to draw in, but at the moment we've kept it tight. We've also worked closely with Alan and in particular with Andrew on the design. Andrew's done a lot of work and we've incorporated some of the principles of the Seagull Centre. Sorry, there's just a picture of it. Looking at, in particular, traffic flow. Getting traffic flow right is really, really important for the whole of the proposed new transfer station as well as the resource recovery. It's really something that needs to get right, get it wrong, and you put people off coming there. Just looking at the Seagull Centre again, just some of the traffic. The recently opened drop-off centre has made a significant improvement to the volume and the engagement we get from the community. Taking examples of elsewhere, Raglan is a prime example, and also with Auckland, there's a number of them have popped up, but the issue with Auckland now is they've been given $11 million to establish 9 resource recovery centres. So it's a big thing. That's where a lot of the funding's going. Just a map to show you where they all are. But primarily, the facility here will be based on what's happened at the Seagull Centre, and biggest reason it's local. It's got experience, a track record with the council. It's been going 16 years, self-sustaining. Other than infrastructure's come from things like the Waste Minimisation Fund. It's got high engagement with the community. It's a lot of volunteers as well as employment. And also, one of the major issues is looking at changing of the culture. And just an anecdote, prior to COVID, the new drop-off centre opened in tandem with the Seagull Centre, and we're struggling to get people through the facility. But with COVID, the transfer stations weren't open, and when they did open, they were allowing 1 or 2 people in at a time, and so the traffic was diverted through the facility, and people were parked in the facility. So it gave us and our staff a chance to engage with the community and go through what they were dropping or throwing away, and that led to we think, a substantial increase in the volume of people coming now through the facility. So that was a sort of benefit of the COVID lockdown, going from about 15 to 20 vehicles a day to about 50 to 60. So where we are now is, I'll just skip through the e-waste thing. What we're after is, in order to proceed with this thing, we need to apply for funding. Funding comes through the Waste Minimisation Fund, and we need to have a plan to present to the Waste Minimisation Fund that we've got a place, we've got engagement with the local authority, we've got land or the potential for land to move forward with. So in our proposal, that's what we're after, is a memorandum of understanding or some sort of lease arrangement.
Okay.
And that's where we are at this stage.
All right, thank you.
Just a comment, are you aware with all the street waste and all these plans?
Correct.
It's been discussed many times at this table, and it's all budgeted for, so you're just working in ancillary of what we're doing anyway. Something new, it's actually what we're doing anyway.
So just to clarify, and we were thrilled to see in the long-term plan budget, the proposal for $3 million
Yeah, the budget's in there.
Yeah, and which is fantastic. The difference with this is that this is a community-run facility,
And that's what we've talked about too, it's the same thing.
which is not included in that.
I'm not going to debate it, but it's all being well canvassed in this community board.
What I would say is that
So we all agree with you.
fantastic is that the way we've done it is the most efficient form of funding, is that you can get 90% of the thing funded through the waste minimisation funds, which helps everybody. But
But there's different levels of funding for community facilities as opposed to council campuses, which is where the synergy of the two working together. So, yeah, we agree with you, Murray.
Thank you both for your efforts. It's an item on our agenda obviously today, so you're very welcome to stay and listen, but thank you for your efforts.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, I do have one last speaker, Tracy. Sorry, I didn't get your surname. Welcome.
Last but not least.
Save the best.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right.
No pressure.
Okay, I'm here as a representative of the Cook's Beach Tennis Club today. There's two areas that I'd like to cover with you, or request help with. The first one is currently we have 3 courts at the tennis club, one of which we have placed a basketball hoop on. We used to just have that on there in the winter, but we decided, partly because it's quite hard to lift it on and off, that we would leave it there over the summer and just use it in conjunction with the courts. It is very well used, particularly with the younger members of the community, visitors and residents alike. However, over the last few years, having it on the court in the summer with people playing tennis, we've found that it's not really conducive to have it next to the tennis courts when both sports are being played together. So what we would request is that the hoop is resited to a different place in Cook's Beach where it would be free to use for people. The court own the hoop and they would be happy to donate that. What we need help with is to find a suitable location and have a concrete pad put in place for use of the hoop. And this is basically what we're requesting council's help for. The other thing to note on that is that the court that the hoop is currently on, we've also had a request from the local pickleball club to turn that particular court into a pickleball court, which will be a really good use of the court and also offer more facilities to the community. And Paul has just reminded me there that we do have the residents and ratepayers backing on doing this. So that's the first area. Any questions on that?
I thought might be able to help. Have you identified an area? Because I'm mindful that we have been through this exercise more than once. So when someone could identify an area to put it to, then we've got somewhere to go. But up until now, the areas have been identified and been accepted. So
suitable,
So if someone came to us and said, our community would like this put here, then we can deal with that.
Okay. We have probably 3 spots in mind.
Okay.
But I don't know that that's been raised with
The same one that you're thinking of is a good spot.
I agree.
Yeah. But
However, it's the community going to drive it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, you had another item, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the second proposal is for the council to consider adopting Cooks Beach tennis courts and maintaining the courts going forward. The courts are well used. We have a membership of approximately 30 families. However, the majority of users are casual players / visitors. So what we do on a yearly basis, the Cooks Beach Resort campsite actually hires the court out for us, and we probably get 150 to 200 bookings a year on that. And then also we have the members. This year we actually left the courts open, well, mainly because of COVID, and we thought we'd just offer the facility free for people. And I would say we've had much more people using the court. So I think if it was council owned and it was open, I think it would be really, really well used and a really good community facility. The reason that we're asking for council to adopt it is most of our members don't live permanently in Cooks Beach, which is a logistical headache for running a committee, organising maintenance, etc. We do feel the club is a valuable asset to the community, however, would probably be far better run if it was adopted by council.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
No, no.
Yeah, I just like to say that, like Tony said, it'd be good to source a potential site, because I think it's going to be, you know, I guess you guys need to do the consultation with the, yeah, because like any of these things will become contentious, so you can get a agreement. Rate cards, I think it'd be really helpful.
So if we look at sites and propose them and see what feedback we get, and then bring it back here.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I'd add to that is I think with these type of facilities, I like to see the community engagement and you know, a bit of fundraising, things like the concrete pad in place, because obviously we understand the situation in councils, and it's you know, I think it's going to be a utilised facility locally, so the fundraising and the community would be a good way to put it together.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks for coming in. Is there anybody I've missed? No. Fantastic. All right. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Tony. Seconded by Murray. All those in favour?
Aye.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you.
I can see it.
Do we have, thanks, Paul. Do we have any items not on the agenda?
Madam Chair, there is one late item that we wish to bring forward, which would be a public excluded item. It's a property related matter.
Okay.
The reason being the commercial sensitivity. And the reason why it's late is because it's a matter that requires some urgent, immediate action and can't wait for the next board meeting.
All right, thank you. And any conflicts of interest?
Just a question.
Yes.
On the item to do with the pension housing, Tony and I are going to be sitting, well, I'm going to talk about myself now, I'm going to be sitting on deliberations for reserve management. Do I have a conflict of interest discussing that here?
That's a good question.
And I see that I probably do.
Madam Chair, my take on my advice on it, it's your decision at the end of the day, is that the information that's contained in the report, as I understand it, relates to the existing reserve management plan. I can be corrected on that. We need to check that with John Muston, really.
I wonder if to keep out of it and just declare an interest, and just let the committee board make a decision, and then we're completely clear when it comes to deliberations and nothing else. So I'll declare that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll do the same thing for the same reason, because clearly I'll be.
Is it the
Item 2.1, sorry, item 3.2. So.
Well, both have to, because we'll both be other.
Deliberations.
Yeah, of the reserve management. I don't want to preempt anything.
Okay, that's
So
fine.
better we keep out.
So where does that leave us with 4? So we're still good to go.
Yep.
Okay. And I would like to declare a conflict of interest on the item relating to Austin Drive and the LTP. Okay. So you got both of those? All right.
I'm fair, so you don't have to do that. All you're doing is transferring the conflict of interest.
All right, so that takes us to item 1.6, which is our minutes for confirmation on page 3. Anyone have any comments? Right, can I have a mover and a seconder? Thanks, Deli, seconded by?
I'll second.
Bill, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? None carried. Okay, which takes us to item 2.1, which is the Mercury Bay Community Board submission on the long-term plan on page 12. Are we going to go through this line by line?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if you're okay, if I just sort of take it
Yes.
line by line, so, the
Can we
first
have that on
item,
the screen, please?
sorry?
Are you able to bring that up?
Hang on, let me think about this. I have to do it through here and share my screen.
Okay.
Did you?
No, I'm
Borrow that?
anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a specific.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So the first item relates to the Matarangi land purchase, and what's suggested in there is what has been discussed and proposed in our previous discussions with the representatives of the Matarangi communities. So I think it's aligning with that. So just feel out if there's any questions or changes that you want to make.
Oh, sorry, we've got a question from Donna. Yeah, would you both like to come up to the table? It makes sense, because you're probably going to answer all the hard questions. Sorry, Alan, is that what you want to do? Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning. Good morning.
The only comments I had is when I did read this, is a bit about investigating the funding of the district portion of the purchase from reserve funds for health, stormwater or parks. I checked out if the reserves for stormwater and parks and there are none. So I'm not, unless, yeah, I'm not, I don't, there is no reserves.
So can I ask a question on that? So first question I have we collected contributions? And have they used somewhere else, or have we not collected the contributions?
You're talking about development contributions, are you? Because this here, I just thought you were talking about just reserves, any reserves. What reserves are you referring
Which would
to?
include development levies, any funds that's counted as.
Right.
Can I just interrupt, sorry, I don't know if you're pained on it, but I think the answer to those questions is what will come through in the response.
Right, okay.
So the community board, I think, just wanted to get on the record.
Right,
That
okay.
that was an issue that they wanted to make sure is being
Yeah.
covered off. So if there is no funds, that'll come through and
Okay.
report on.
Yeah,
on
sure.
something okay with that. So,
Yeah.
This would mean that wasn't developed under the old legislation, then it should be.
Financial reserves, yeah.
So just so that would be a question come deliberation time or post deliberation that I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know where all of the contributions and the balances are. And if they're not, what have we collected and what's it been spent on? So I'm going to be looking for balances in Mercury Bay reserve accounts.
Yeah.
So there'll be
we've got
contribution
those.
reserves and all that, so.
We've got all that information.
And I think it's interesting after that sort of design, where the lakes really are only for stormwater. Now, that's been defined, so that'll be an interesting.
Well, through the chair, I think there's, it's not quite as black and white.
There'll be an interesting discussion.
It's not quite as black and white because there's still amenity values of having a lake if it's going to swim in it, so. It's not, yeah.
Very,
Bird life is what makes it unswimmable.
And I'd like to take photos of
There's land based.
Yes. Yeah.
Recreational benefits, yeah. So, Bill, should we add all those reserve funds or development levies?
Could you put development contributions instead of
Add that into
reserves, please, or development contribution reserves?
Yeah, or could we just say reserve funds or development?
appreciation reserves.
Yes,
Or development levies, yeah. Okay, cool.
that would make it clearer.
Yeah, sorry, that's fine. Cool. Next one's the sale of land in Whangamata, which is basically supporting the council's preferred option.
Do we need to say anything?
Yeah.
Do we
Sorry.
need to wait and say anything
I'm a
here?
little bit on that camp. But
Well, through the chair, if I can jump in, the risk is if you don't say you agree with something, or you know what I mean, then you hear a lot of what we don't agree.
Right,
You're
okay.
silent. So,
Okay,
our advice to everyone, not just the community board, but everyone in the public is submit, in the community, submit on everything, you know, with you, and submit if you like something, you say you like it. Because often what happens is people don't say they like something, they think, oh, cool, option one, that's the one I want, so I won't bother saying anything about that. Then you get all these submissions that say we hate option one, and then all you've got is submissions hating option one, whereas if people put in their supporting submissions.
yeah, I understand, I do understand.
And I think particularly in view of what's recently happened within our ward, I even that we should.
Okay,
So this is supporting what is in the LTP with the addition that saying that, you know, it's up to the Whangamata Community Board if they want to look at purchasing it with funding from the local Whangamata ward area, then that's up to them. So the item in relation to the increasing cost of rubbish and recycling, so that's something that's with the first bullet point about asking council to release a full review of solid waste strategy and service delivery methods. So that's not currently in the LGP, so the board is suggesting that we should be the council should be making that a priority. And the next bullet point is relating to the summertime collections. So we're basically saying that if a particular area wants a level of service over and above the standard level of service, then that should be funded again by the area that benefits from it.
and what are we calling the standard? That's the two, because there's two communities have an extra one, correct? So we're calling the standard the majority across the district.
Yeah, the two times per week over that summer period.
Yeah.
Rather than the three that those two areas enjoy. Yeah.
Can I something came from a bit, it's in my news report, but so from Pedo Bay, so they vehemently oppose taking mollocks out, and their logic is the mollock costs $17,000 a year to look after. So they're saying, what's the cost when people leave the bucket badges for which a lot of those properties are used, and leave their blue bag out, doesn't get collected, then we have to send a truck out to pick up the rubbish. And is that greater or less than $17,000? So I just figured that might be.
I don't, through the chair, I don't have the numbers at hand. I would suspect it's a lot less.
Yeah, I would
I
too.
can confirm.
But
I can go away and get some numbers and see. We'll see if we've got those
that's
numbers. Yeah. But we know that it'd be way less than that, because we do. It's not that often we have to do that. And again, that comes back to trying to get people to take more responsibility for their own refuse rather than chuck it into the drive and then leave it to be hacked to bits basically.
So the next one is the Matarangi and Pavanui transfer stations, supporting option one, which is no change to the current level of service. Then there's the Mollocks one. So again, we made a similar submission saying that we should do the solid waste review. If we're going to do that, then perhaps the level of service should stay as it is until that's completed. But if it's not done, then they should revert to the standard level of service, which is not having Mollocks. But if they do want to continue with those, if the area of benefit should be paying for it, not the district-wide ratepayers.
Just comment on that also, because I've got a note again from a social media and meetings I've been to, and I'm mindful that we'll be listening to the deliberations on this.
Yeah.
But a lot of issues have turned up since this happened now that might need consideration in a wider context. So I think I know what we're going to hear in the deliberations, but the danger of picking low-hanging fruit and not addressing the bigger picture, which is something we've been trying to do for over 10 years, and we're talking about fees and charges.
Oh, sorry, you're on fees and charges. Okay.
Yeah.
No, we're still on Muller.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I thought you'd moved on.
I was very confused.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were on to, no, okay.
Hold fire.
I retract all that. Well, we're now moving
Just
on.
press pause.
We're now moving on to the fees and charges.
Go.
Can I just explain what we've got here first? So, we're talking about the visitors paying their fair share of costs.
Yep.
So that's what the first bullet point relates to. So we're just simply saying there that we think the wording of the council's favourite option could be improved, because it actually, the way it's worded in the LTP at the moment, it actually basically says that we will be introducing a charge. So we're watering that down a little bit to say that we investigate the introduction of a charge that targets visitors who use our services and facilities.
I wonder whether you and I should be out of all this completely. I really wonder whether Tony and I should exempt ourselves and then just the committee board members make the decision.
Yeah, very good idea, because
I think it would be better.
yeah, that's a call that's entirely up to you.
I think I'll make that call that I exempt myself, because I think the way this is going, it could prejudice us.
Yes, well,
I think I'm going to step back and let the committee board make this decision.
yeah, I think likewise, I think I'll actually remove myself from the item.
I think we'd better, and then we can have more full and frank discussion later, and this is a community board decision from the community board.
Okay.
We're not preempting any decision. We're not being part of the decision here and then part of deliberation. We're just considering this submission.
At other community board meetings, it hasn't been seen as an issue, so long as the councillors haven't expressed any specific views or opinion that said I can go to vote against that.
We've got some strong views
So
on this
if you want
committee,
to-
so I think I'm going to exempt myself.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it's safer too. All right. Sure.
Go have a cup of tea.
When you get to the next
I think there's muffins in there.
Yeah, they are.
There were.
But there's a muffin.
But one of the presenters will muffins. Good luck, Brian.
That's exempting himself.
All right.
The second bullet point there relates simply to at Kuatuna, the
Yes.
proposal to charge a fee for using the Mercury point at Kuatuna. But we're saying very clearly that we think that should not be on that list because it's not a facility that we've invested in providing improvements to and are not likely to do so either in the foreseeable future. And the last little point over the page. A noisy bit. Yeah. The next one is the current fees and charges. So this is something in that's not currently in the annual plan. It is in there, but not as a direct manner as what this says. So we're just saying that the review of fees and charges should be prioritised and that we should have it done so that the outcomes of it are actually in place for the 22-23 financial year. So that includes the full range of fees and charges for all services and facilities.
Yes, sir. I'd like to suggest that we refer the increase to the boat wrap charges to be included in the review of the whole fee structure as a whole, the commercial wharves and everything, rather than just sort of break the wharf charges off as a part.
Right, so
rather than, I guess, to pick off the wharf charges or the pontoon charges, it'd be included in a full review of the whole construction.
Well, at the moment, the wharf charges and everything will be part of that overall review. The bit that's changing immediately, well, there's two things I think that are changing immediately. One is the boat ramp charges, which it was suggested that they go from $80 to $200 per annum.
Yeah.
And the other one is in relation to, there's a new fee in there that I only picked up on this week or last week. In relation, it's called a touchdown fee for the wharves at $250, which is a new fee. But to be honest, I don't know whether Bruce or Don know anything about it, where that actually came from. So I think what Jeremy, if I picked up what you're saying right, is that perhaps those changes to those fees should not be introduced for next year, but they should be
part of that overall review and come in 22, 23 year with whatever the outcome of that review determines.
Is there a science behind the $200, the increase in the costing for the boat ramp?
So
Parking fees?
So through the chair, the science in it is as much in that we've got costs that we need to cover and we're trying to get a better balance between user pays and ratepayers. And looking at it, and often those things are a bit of a gut feel, what feels about right, what feels about an amount that would be acceptable, for an annual permit for boat trailer parking, and looking at it and going, well, if it's $20 a day, then it's, 10 days a year, and trying to kind of get that to feel about right. So there's no kind of hard and fast science because you can't really do it because if you all user pays, that's pure science or all ratepayer funded. So yeah, so long way to answer the question. Which one is that? $5 and $20 for the touchdown fees.
So what is that for?
So that's if someone if they want to just come in to offload commercial, if they're taking, like commercial vessels are picking up passengers or taking them away.
On top of their standard yearly annual fee for their berthage, right?
Yeah, so if they want to be tied up for 30 minutes, I think it's like $5.
Commercial vessels license application fee.
So it's the application fee.
Okay, so we're not talking about cray fishermen and we're talking about passenger vehicle,
No, it would be as well, it would be all.
Any commercial?
It would be, yeah.
Okay.
I think where we got to with a lot of that stuff was that it needs to be subject to that bigger review. And so those ones might have slipped through. Regarding just going back to the boat trailer parking, I think the discussion that was held or the direction that was sought was around let's do that, but hold off on these bigger ones which need more work rather than not do anything while we wait for the bigger review.
See, to me, that feels a bit like we've taken the easy route. Council's taken the easy route, and we can quickly.
Yeah, well, it is the easy route because it's boat trailer parking compared to commercial, which has got so many more variables. So I don't disagree. It's not. I'm not saying it's it's just that whole. Do you hold off while you're trying to resolve the bigger thing, or do you go look? These are going to need to go up anyway, irrespective of a review. We would say.
I'd like to suggest that if we hold off, it will increase the likelihood of the other piece coming through as a.
Possibly.
So the whole thing.
It's just if it's all together, there should be some urgency around getting it done.
Yeah.
Rather than we leave it just.
So the question for the board then is, do you want to include into your submission that $200 fee not be introduced for the 21-22 year, but that it be included as part of the overall review for introduction in 22-23?
That's exactly what we're saying in an articulate way. I think.
And would the one-off fee be included in that?
Yes, sorry to add, that's slightly wrong. So it's what's it called?
Commercial vessel licence application fee. So that was per vessel per annum, $250. And then there's the commercial vessels touchdown fees, which is $5 for the first 30 minutes and then $20 after 30 minutes.
So was that $250?
How would that be placed?
So we need to have more people out and about, more forwards and bylaws people, so.
Yeah.
And this would be on top of their concessions that they're charged.
I believe so.
Completely
It would be
separate.
their berthage. On top of their berthage fee.
That's a bit.
So it's a one-off. If a new person comes in, I'm assuming if a new operator comes in, that wants to use their wharf, then they charge the one-off upfront $250 fee. Then the normal fees will apply as well on an annual basis.
Yeah, which is
so it's not.
Which is the 75
on top of this.
So it's not annual, it's just a one-off.
It's just a one-off.
Oh, it's this per annum, yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to clarify, have our wharf wardens just finished?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was.
So they would need to have an extended.
Yeah, so we need to relook at that. We need to redo that, and have more.
To add to that, Debbie, I think that needs to be part of the review.
Yeah.
And for that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time the wharves weren't required. So make sure we are spending the money wisely.
Yeah.
So we have done a lot of that work, around the number of staff that would be required to police and administer these new charges, but obviously the discussion at council in the direction was let's hold off for the majority of them. So if the board wants to submit and say let's hold off on these ones as well.
I would certainly support my kind of submission to include holding both these. Voting fees.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of pushback on that already.
Yeah, I think to do it justice, it needs to be reviewed as one.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Okay, so we hold off on the voting fees. We want to say anything about the other 251, we'll just leave that line. That's a new thing, isn't it? That's new.
You're saying hold on all those.
so that would all sit under this one review.
Right.
Is that right? Yeah.
Who would do the review?
Start.
Bruce, have we got a firm finite date to actually get this underway this week?
Yes, Derek and I've already had discussions with Derek, so she's going to lead this piece of work. And we've got a finite date in that we need to get it through by the end of the calendar year to hit the next annual plan. So all work has to be done by the end of this calendar year.
30th of
So like end of
June.
calendar year, December.
Oh, right, sorry.
Calendar year, so we can get it into the annual plan for the next. So the annual plan will go out. We normally have it all landed the draft by the end of December, and then normally goes out in February, March next year to start 1 July next year. So yeah, so we'd have to. So the plan is to have all that stuff done by the end of this calendar year.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so number 5 is,
Just before we leave fees and charges, sorry, can I just take us back to solid waste? And just pick up just a small point of clarification is that there are different charges in different wards for solid waste. So I think, and Donna's just pulled it up here, so solid waste, if you're in Thames-Coromandel, you're paying like $190 a year. I think Mercury Bay is $220, and then Palmer and Palmer is higher again.
233.
I can't remember.
And this all relates back
So
to,
So a lot of that, I understand that's historic, and that's around the number of collections they're getting.
okay, so they are paying,
So they are paying more. If you get 3 collections compared to 1, you're definitely paying more.
okay.
Or 3 or 2.
And the folks that have marks, do they pay for that privilege?
Well, no, not really, because if you've got your Thames-Coromandel paying $190, Mercury Bay pays $208, so it's $18 more a year for that extra collection, I guess. Extra collection during the peak period, and then Tairopānui and Whangatā paying $223. So Mercury Bay is the one that's got the Mollugs, and Paula. But I would suggest looking at those numbers, they don't. There's no kind of major change based on Mollugs.
Right, so that it would be potentially a revenue loss for us to cut them back. Kawanui and.
No, it's not a revenue loss because all these numbers are just calculated out to balance out what our costs are. So
And also this only, this targeted rate only partially funds. Only partially funds rubbish and recycling. The general rate actually picks up, or the UAGC picks up the rest.
Plus you've got bag sales as well.
Yes.
So there's a mixture of the 3 different sources of funding. Okay. But I just want to pick that up because I think some of the comments are talking about need to pay different amounts, and so they already are paying slightly different amounts.
that's just reinforcing it.
Yeah, not much, but just a little bit.
Right, so item 5 just relates to saying keep all the current CapEx items that are in the LTP draft, keep them in there. Then there's the item 6, the water supply at Matarangi slip remediation. So the community board is saying that they think that work could be completed because work has been done on the reservoirs at Matarangi, and so far they're performing satisfactorily, I'm advised, and the 453,000 that's in the LTP is actually to design the replacement for the reservoirs, whatever that might be, if there is further slippage and failure. So it's having, I guess, the plans and everything in the drawer, so we're shovel ready if an issue does arise. So that the submission is saying, well, let's deal with that if or when it arises, rather than spending 450,000 now on a sort of a just in case situation. So that's what that one is about. The number 7, the Austin Drive item, which Rick is just removing herself from the brief before. So again, that's suggesting that that could actually be deleted because there are issues around the consenting and the conditions of consent at the time and who pays for what and what can and can't happen. The matter has been complicated with subsequent events where the district plan has actually zoned that area as residential, so it means that they can be now split into smaller lots, which puts extra demand on water services, etc. But the community board is saying at this stage that we think that should be deleted and that should be dealt with again as a separate matter, particularly in relation to how it is funded, and that if that work does need to progress, then it should be at the request of the residents who live there and they should be paying for it. So that's really why the community board is suggesting we delete that CapEx item.
So what was the detail of work around this place? What was it?
So in the historic subdivision where, I don't know all the details, but it sounds like when the subdivision was originally done, they elected not to install the full infrastructure that they would normally install in a subdivision. They installed more of like a trickle feed system with tanks on each property. And so effectively what that happened, that was years ago now, 20 years ago when that was done, I would suggest, maybe a little bit less. And then now we've ended up with a situation where they're getting a different level of service to everyone else. So everyone else who's paying the water rate gets full flow and pressure at the gate. They don't need to have a tank to trickle feed in their own pump and all the rest of it. So so it effectively has created two different service levels, of which we're actually not set up to kind of deal with that lower service level. So we have had pressure from a number of residents there around why am I paying the same as someone who lives in Cook Drive who's getting, full service. And then as Alan says, the district plan review has complicated that a little bit as well by kind of not taking cognizance of that difference, and they're coming in with the same zoning as other surrounding areas. So it's just a funny anomaly that probably should have never happened. It should never have been allowed to happen through council and the way it was developed. I would suggest that this, if that was happening now, we'd say no.
Right.
And we have said no to a number of properties, a number of subdivisions around the district where they've tried to come in with that, because it's a very quick and cheap way of doing it,
And how many properties are affected?
Oh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Someone else around the table might know, but
15, 20.
Yeah, I would have said something like that. Yeah.
Is that area liable to expand?
Or potentially like around, picking up Alan's point about the district plan.
Yes.
The potential for subdivision and expansion within that area, I would suggest, but I
if that is the case,
I don't know all the details.
And there is adjacent land between the subdivision and the airfield, which is waterways owned land, which is most likely to be developed at some point in the future.
Yeah, from memory, there's other benefits. It's not just, I don't think it's just Austin Drive which benefits from the upgrade. That it will set us up a bit better for a better rank lane setup, which is when you're doing water engineering. That's really what you're trying to aim for. So
is this going to bite us on the bum if we do nothing in the future?
Well, it's an issue for us at the moment, so we have to work our way through it one way or another. There might be a different option about how we can try and deal with it, but this is the kind of engineering option that the engineering my team have put forward. So
well, I mean, if we substituted the word deleted for deferred, that would be sending a signal which may never occur.
Yeah, I mean, that could be an option that you...
I don't think it's a good option.
No, but I hear what you're saying, that can kind of sit on the fence a little bit, isn't it?
Yes.
Community boards and defer rather than delete.
Question is defer to when.
Yes, and that is, it's still an open option for them to expect.
Yeah, well, there's nothing ever closed anyway, like the annual plan gets reviewed every year, so I think at this point in time, there's not enough knowledge about the detail of this whole matter. That's really why the community was suggesting what it is, so let's take it out for now and work our way through it.
Okay, I'm happy with
some
that.
sort of solution that involves ratepayer funding as a result of that. Let's come back to it at that point.
So obviously when the submissions all come in, so the board, if the board submits their submission saying delete it, other people there'll be other submissions around this point. Around this project. As all those submissions come in, then staff will do a whole lot of work for the councillors as to provide better level of information, more detail and recommendations, so at that time when they have their deliberations, that's when this more detailed information will go up and help them make a decision on okay, do we delete it because it's another option, or do we actually not delete it and we carry on or defer or whatever. So So I think Alan's, steering you guys in a good direction as far as how you go forward.
Deferral is too risky.
Well, you're kind of sitting on the fence, I think,
Yes.
I think, as Alan says, there's opportunities to things can always come back. There's nothing, once it's deleted, doesn't mean it can never come back.
Yeah, which is why I was concerned about if there was future development with the conditions still obtainable.
Yeah, so there would be some conditions that would still remain, but we'd work through that at that stage for the future.
Okay, fine.
All right, so we're leaving it as it is.
Yep.
Number 8 relates to the Matarangi Wharf renewals, and that's most of that cost, about 40,000 of that cost is actually for renewing the consent, which comes up in 22-23. So we're saying that we're happy for that to stay as it is, but I think the reason is just sort of highlighting it, that it's probably an ongoing issue in respect of other similar assets in the future. So moving on to the next list is items that are in the nice to have list, and so they aren't currently included in the long-term plan. This is a list basically of items that is suggested could be considered for either removing or putting back into the long-term plan as a priority. So the Flexible Bay Coastal Erosion, there's funding in there for 1.8 million, which is in the nice to have list, so it's not currently actually in the LTP, but the board is suggesting that we actually remove that completely, because the work has been done at Flexible Bay, and again, it's a bit like the Matarangi Reservoirs. If it fails in the future, then that's a matter that needs to be dealt with in the future if or when that actually arises. So we're saying I think that can actually come off the nice to have list even. Robinson Road Coastal Hazard Protection, so that's suggesting that should become a priority in 21-22 because it is a high risk area in respect of trees, and in some places it's not too far away from the roading infrastructure. So the board is suggesting there that we put that into the 21-22 year as a priority. The Hahe wastewater extension, likewise, similarly, we've done a whole lot of work around that with the community, and there certainly is a high community expectation that that work will be progressed. So the board, also what's in there, suggesting that should actually come back into the must-have list rather than the nice-to-have list. Likewise, the water extension, so it's exactly the same story for water and Hahe. The cycleway development, again, the board is suggesting it's developed a cycling strategy. So again, a community expectation has been created, if you like, through the adoption of that strategy. And the 29,000 that was proposed will enable us to actually start some of that. It's only small amount anyway, so suggesting that should come back into the must-have list. Likewise, the next two items, footpath construction and street light improvements. So, and historically, there has been budgets that are locally funded for footpath construction and street light improvements that have been put into the nice-to-have list, and that's happened across the district rather than the must-have list. But this proposal was suggesting that they should both be brought back into the must-have list as well, so that the work that's been started on improving facilities can be, or providing new facilities, can continue. The Kaimara Cemetery Stage 3, again, that has a little bit of uncertainty, but if demand for plots does continue or increase, then we could be caught in a difficult situation of not actually having a place for people to
rest,
to be buried in. So it's saying that, hey, we really think we should progress that work so that we don't get in an embarrassing situation. Number 17, the Whitianga Esplanade reclamation. Again, that's a project that the board is saying is a high priority locally. So the submission is saying that should also be moved back into the must-have rather than the nice-to-haves. And then this minor reserve project, so it's the same story as for path construction, so that's a budget that has been there historically on an annual basis, so it's asking for that to be reinstated, albeit at a lower level than what it has been in the past. The Mary Titai Mangakahi Reserve, so that's, we've been through an extensive community consultation process there to agree a plan for the future development of that reserve, which was budgeted for previously. Because of the fairly protracted consultation process, we weren't able to actually get that completed. So the budget is no longer there. So this is actually saying, though, that because of the expectation that's been created out in that community, that we should actually bring that into the must-do projects for the 21-22 years, so the work that's been agreed can actually be implemented. The next list is some CapEx items that are not actually on either the must-haves or the nice-to-have lists at the present time, and that relates to the Wharekāhau wastewater and water services. So in the current year, we've completed the initial investigations into the provision of those services there. So this is saying that we should now be following that up with CapEx in the must-have list that actually this shows the community that we are moving forward. You'll see that they're not it's not suggested until 24-25 for 3 years starting then. That basically is to tie in with Hāhei, so that once we get the Hāhei stuff done, we then move on to the Wharekāhau work following that. There'll be a submission coming from the community out there saying they should start next year. So anyway, then the OPEX budgets for the beds of the Hāhei and Hot Water Beach parking and park and ride facility. Well, that's just a simple logistical thing really around. At the moment, some of those expenses are sitting in the community facility budgets and others are sitting in the road budgets.
So there's just an accounting.
Can we consolidate that into one? Is what that's about. And then down the bottom, at the end, I've just actually done a bit of a list just to try and show what the effect of all of those things are. So the first table is the district funded stuff, where there's the stuff that you might not have printed and read, but the stuff with the minor side before it is stuff that we're suggesting can come out. And the other stuff is what we're suggesting we would like to go back in. So you'll see for 21-22 year for district funded items, we're suggesting 380 net increase of 385,000 over what's on the LTP. And then the next list is the locally funded items. So again, if you look at 21-22, there's about $1.109 million being suggested to put those capital items back into the locally funded budget. And that's that last little bit. That's based on the figures just for the ward only, which would look at 1352 per rating unit. But I know you'll comment on that. Yeah. There's a compounding effect.
Yeah, it is. There is a compounding effect. I did a little bit of a calculation. So also, because Mercury Bay is also in the district, so they would pay that additional district one. So for that first year, it would be 15-14. Right. And then the compounding of all over the years for taking into account of the whole would be an increase of $186 over the 10 years. And that's on top of the already planned increase, which is about 1.
Can you give us an increase over 3?
I'll have to put up the spreadsheet.
Because reviewing 3 anyway, isn't it?
It is.
So the 3 is more relevant in a way.
And that's sort of the calculation I did is just taking into account that for the reclamation, I didn't add that in because that's budgeted to be fully funded by DC. So I didn't include that in the rates calculation.
Right.
So I did that, depending on how the funding of these things were to, we'll change it, but for the first 3 years, it would be $53.77, around about $54.
That's district and.
That's Mercury Bay, yeah, so that's just that, sorry, that is, that's the increase that you proposed on the local and on the district.
Yeah, perfect, that's both.
Yeah.
Total.
Yes. Lovely.
Nice name, Helen.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Helen.
All right, nothing anyone wants to add to that?
No.
Captured our discussions really well.
Right, so what was the resolution?
I don't know,
No, there wasn't one.
that you approve it.
Yeah, there is one.
We just had just the changes though, right? We did a couple of changes.
Yeah, we
They
have got.
received the report and that you approve it.
Okay, do we need to add subject to changes or you've got those? Okay. So if you can just update that resolution.
Yeah, so what are we changing? What do you want me to?
So we're just saying that the Mercury Bay Community Board submission be approved.
Yeah.
Including the changes made during our discussion. Just a couple of changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Did you have a mover and second?
No.
Bill, Jeremy, all those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Cup of tea time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good
That's
idea.
really good.
Yeah, it was good.
Right.
I'm satisfied.
Actually, forgetting.
Oh, no, don't be like that.
Oh, really?
All right.
This next item